So I was busy with Fashion Week stuff last weekend, but we are back and I'm looking forward to this next conversation with Valerie, who's going to give us some insight on what it's like to live in Madrid, Spain. So thanks to Instagram, Valerie and I have been following each other for a while. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being on. So tell me a little bit about what city you were born in and your background.
Yeah, of course. So I am originally from California. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. Grew up in the area that I grew up in is basically where Silicon Valley is. Then in my adult life, I lived in San Francisco up until recently. I made the move to Madrid. I've been here a little over a week, so I can't believe that I'm finally here. Um, and yeah, so my whole background actually started in fashion. I had studied at FITM. Didn't really do anything in fashion. But I always had this entrepreneurial spirit in me, and started my first business when I was 21 years old. And that was more of like a lifestyle concierge on demand business that I had started. And that kind of gradually progressed into what I do now. I eventually ended up leaving my business after 7 years because I had fallen in love with social media and everything that digital marketing had to do at that time. And because of Instagram also taking off at that time, my account started to grow. I also had my current blog, but it was under a different name. And so it just kind of gradually and organically led me into a career within social media. And then in 2016, I started freelancing within social and just managing different social media accounts for clients, creating their content. And I eventually created my social media agency, Craveable Social. And now my whole focus is my blog, which is a health and wellness blog called Wellness Bum. I originally had started it under the name of Live the Little Things, but as of last year, I did a whole new brand, new, I guess, like refresh, new branding of it. And yeah, I'm really happy with it where it is now. And I feel like it's something that I'm really proud of now.
So speaking of wellness, can you tell us about your 28 days journal with intention challenge? I saw a bit of that on your social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So my 28-day journal with intention challenge, I started about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was going through a big life change. I was going through a divorce, and I found that journaling was really helpful. But I was still wanting to dive a little bit deeper, and so I had invited friends. I invited my subscribers to join me in on it. I thought that not one single person was going to join. I actually had 100 people sign up that first year, and it
Wow.
could just, yeah, and then it just continued on. And it wasn't until the pandemic that it started to really grow. And obviously, for everything that was happening at that time, we were all at home. We were all seeking a little bit more of tapping in within ourselves and reevaluating life in general. And so this year's theme is all about change and embracing change. And the theme came about because of where I am right now, and I was going through this massive change of moving from the U.S. to Spain.
Mhm.
Um, and this year, there's a little bit more of an organized flow, but it doesn't just have to do with just a change in terms of moving. It also has to do with any kind of change that anyone's going through. And every year I do launch it on February 1st, and it's available all year long. So anyone can join at any time. Whenever you sign up, your day one will start 2 days after you sign up.
And can you talk a bit about women's rights in Spain? Do you think that women are treated equally to men?
Oh, absolutely. This is some the topic that I discuss this with all of my friends all the time, whether it's my American
Oh,
female friends or if it's my Spanish female friends here. Something that I didn't know until a couple of years ago is that women in Spain have fought so hard for their rights to be treated as equals, that they have fought so hard that it transcends in within their culture and everything that they do, even from like dating to everything, every day-to-day life. I feel like women and men here in Spain are treated very, very equal, and I think it's because Spanish women really fight hard for their rights. That it's really impressive, and it's very admirable. I think that everything that's happened within the US, most recently with abortion, I remember when that had happened, I was here in
Mm,
Spain, and my Spanish friends, they were saying, like, how is this happening in the US? This would never happen in Spain. And it's
mm.
crazy because it's like you would think that that would never happen in the US either, but it did. And it really opened up this conversation to really understand their culture, but also understand our culture as well as women.
Right, that was well said. So speaking of women's rights, I know I saw a post that I sent you on social media yesterday about how women are now being offered paid leave, when they're on their time of the month. So
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
I think that's incredible. I think that yeah, I feel like unless you're a female, you really don't understand
Right.
what it's like to go through your cycle. And I think that men don't really understand that us women, our hormones are fluctuating throughout the month. We don't just have it, just like one time thing. It's like fluctuating throughout the month. When it's the time of the month, some women have really excruciating cramps, and
Mm.
sometimes that pain is so debilitating that it's like the last thing that you want to do is be at work, for example, and concentrating on something that it's even hard to concentrate when you're going through such a painful process. I think that it's amazing that Spain is doing this, and I really hope that this creates a trend amongst the entire world.
Yeah, I agree, and what do you think that the male citizens will think? Do you think they'll agree with it? Because I can some of the men thinking like, "Oh, really? They're doing that?" Like, maybe not being
It's
so supportive of it.
right. And it's so interesting. I think that men here are very supportive with women and their in women's rights.
Mhm.
Um, so much so that to give you an example, so I was actually on a date on Wednesday, and we were somehow on the
Okay.
topic of you know, cultural differences in the US
Yeah.
and in Spain, but this was more so cultural differences in the workplace. And I came to learn that in Spain, maternity leave is granted to both parents, men and women, and they get
Wow.
6 months off. So it's like just to see that, and also hearing this gentleman's viewpoint about how amazing that is that the government is seeing that family values come first, and if that means taking 6 months off, then so be it. Your company will pay for a part of it, and then the government will pay for the other part.
Yeah, I know here, I mean, I'm sure that you know this too, that men don't really get much time off or really any time off as at all. And I have to agree with that. I think that it's so important that family unit and when your child is first born to be there and be supportive.
Right. It really is.
So do you think there's any human rights issues facing Spain right now, or it seems like everything has progressed?
There are a lot of progressions in Spain, but then there's also a lot of things that obviously do need improvement.
Hmm.
At least being an outsider in this culture, in this country, you see after a while of visiting Spain so often, you start to see a lot of little nuances and a lot of things, a lot of flaws within a country. Every country has its flaws, every country has its problems. Um, there are problems in terms of their immigration and just racism within the country in that sense. I feel like it's very
Hmm.
similar to in the US, but I feel like with our generation, I feel like our generation is really working hard to not have that be an issue, but I would say that there are flaws here.
Right, like with any country, there'll always be pros and cons and flaws and things to continue working on.
Right.
And do you feel like there's any racism at all?
I think that there is. I think that it would be very foolish to say that there isn't. I feel like
Mm,
this is a topic that unfortunately is everywhere. It's a problem that's everywhere. And I think that I feel like in Madrid, not so much, but I know that once you go out to like the smaller communities, different parts of Spain, at least from other people that I know, um, that are of different backgrounds, different skin tones. I know that they have
right.
experienced racism. It's sad. It's really unfortunate, just because I mean, I wish that like when I hear things like that, I just want to like do something to make it go away instantly.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting to think about, like, racism within some Hispanic cultures, like, I'm half Dominican, And
Mhm.
in some of the Hispanic communities, there is some of, like, a separation between the light skin and then darker Hispanics,
Right.
which is an interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, I am. I'm also, my parents are both from Mexico, so I'm Mexican American,
Okay,
and like you said, within the Latin culture as it is, there's already, like, this inner racism. I remember, one time having a conversation with a friend, and she's also Latina, and we were talking about how within the Latin culture, there's this whole thing, called mejorando la raza, and that means basically doing something to improve the race, basically in a racial context of race, just racism. It's the
mhm,
meaning is more so you marry up, but you don't want to marry someone with darker skin because you're basically marrying down, which is so sad to think about that.
mhm,
Um, I haven't heard it in a while, but I just remember my
yeah,
grandmother used to say things like that, and it was like my family would have to tell her like, "Hey, you kind of like
no.
got to change your viewpoint." And I
Mm,
feel like as my cousins and I, we've gotten older. She like softened and she like realized a lot of things and realized like the way that she was thinking was completely wrong. And I mean, like she's the most loving person, but I think that it was
yeah,
just an educational element of having to
right.
let her know that that's not how things are like said and thought about these days.
Mm. I feel like each new generation that comes in helps their family to see things from a different light or perspective.
Right.
And how do you feel about the dating culture in Spain? Do you see a lot of couples getting married in their early 20s? Like, I can say now, I feel like my friend group in the US, I'm 28, so I'll be 30 soon. It's kind of a mix. Like, there's a lot of people
Mhm.
still being single, focusing on their careers. What do you see? What do you think?
Right. I think that it's interesting. It's like that with my amongst my group of friends in the US. So I'm gonna be 37, but even in my early 20s, people either got married really young or they like waited. And I still have some friends in their 30s that still haven't been married. They're still, working on their career, trying to find their partner. And I feel like that's just the growing trend globally. And I feel like here I've noticed that as well. And again, I don't know if it's because I am in a major city. May be a little bit different, in the suburbs or like the smaller towns. But I have noticed that people here are getting married a little bit later in life.
Yeah,
And I think, people are focusing on their careers and just really taking their time to find a partner.
right. And have you traveled to any of the other cities yet or countries since you've been there?
Not yet. So I've only been here a little over a week, but
Oh, wow.
I've traveled to Spain quite a lot throughout the year since 2010.
Okay.
And I have spent, time last year I spent three months here in Spain as well.
Wow.
I spent most of my time in Alicante, which is on the coast, a little bit smaller than Madrid or Barcelona. And I would say it's about the same. Like I noticed the same thing that I mean, there are young families, but I would say that there is more people our age that are professionals, not married and with kids.
Right. And can you tell us about some of the traditional meals from Spain?
Yeah. So every area has like their regional dishes, but they all kind of are the same. They just have like a little bit of a variation. Here in Madrid, because it's winter time, a very popular winter dish are like these stews. So there's like this one type of stew that kind of sounds gross, but it's made out of tripe and it's called gallos. And it sounds really gross. It looks a little weird, but it's actually really good, especially on a really cold winter day. And then they have a lot of like bean type of like heavier stews, which are really good. Um, and I would say that, yeah, like in the wintertime, that's really popular, but obviously like your typical tapa style dishes, like the jamons and different little pinchos and things like that. That's very popular if you go out for a drink. They give you a tapa, so it's really nice.
Ooh, that sounds
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the food compared to food in what town did you say you're from again in California?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, but I
Okay.
lived in San Francisco my adult life.
Yeah, there must be good food in San Francisco though as well.
Yeah. I would say that the food here is a little bit better, but I don't think
Okay,
I
okay.
think that back home we also have like good variations of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are some must-see sites while in Spain?
I would say so if you're coming to Madrid, you absolutely have to check out El Prado Museum, which is one of like the most well-known museums here in Spain. Then there's also El Retiro, which is basically like Golden Gate Park in San Francisco or Central Park in New York City. It is just such a magnificent park, and it's just so beautiful. I literally go there every day. I make it a point to walk through there with my dog. It's
Oh,
just such an amazing place. It's so beautiful. And then there's also Plaza Mayor, which is like this big square, very historic square. I'm sure like if you Google in any image of or come across any image of Madrid, that one will pop up. It is just such a cool place. It is very touristy, but it is pretty cool to check out. I would say it's probably like the equivalent to like the busyness of Times Square.
wow.
So I would say that those would be like my top three, but I feel like just like I don't know, I feel like there's always something new that I discover and something exciting to see here.
Yeah, there's always something new. And do you have
Yeah.
any advice for Americans that are traveling to Spain?
Yeah, I think that with Spain, everything that you think to know about Spain, about culture, the culture here in Spain, I would say that it's probably a slight small percentage of it. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure that like most of us coming to Spain for the very first time, we always think of paella and sangria and like all those things. And it was the first time that I came to Spain, I was really shocked to find out that only tourists drink sangria. It's not really like a
Wow.
thing here. Yeah, it's not really a thing here. And in the summertime, if you really want to be like a Spaniard, they order a drink called Tinto de Verano, which is basically it's kind of like sangria. It's basically wine and I think like a grape soda. It has like an orange wedge in it. Um, but also paella, paella is really more what you would find on the coast in Valencia, not necessarily in the interior. So if you want
Okay.
really good paella, then you have to go to the coast. And generally, paella doesn't have seafood, which I was so blown away to find out that paella here does not have seafood.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because if you talk to people like in Barcelona, they'll tell you that um, paella, it comes in very different variations. If there's paella that does come with seafood, but you wouldn't put a meat product in it, like a land animal in it. So I guess it's just more regional where you're getting it. But I was really shocked
Mm.
that it wasn't like this thing like in Madrid. And then also flamenco dancing. Flamenco dancing is generally something that comes from the south in Sevilla, I think. So I thought it was like something that like national dance, you find it everywhere, but it isn't.
Oh, the dance culture must be so fun in Spain and
Yeah.
in the Latin countries.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I would say another big tip with culture in Spain that still gets me every single time that I'm here, and I don't think I'm ever gonna get used to it, is Spaniards eat late. Everything starts late, and it's like, I'm not kidding you, if you go to a restaurant at 7 p.m., they're probably not open. Most restaurants don't open till 8:30, 9
What?
p.m. Yes. And
Wow.
so if you go to dinner around that time, it would be the equivalent to going to dinner at 5 p.m. in the US. It's going to be empty. You're not going to find the person there. But if you go
Yeah.
around 10, 11 p.m., it is like you can't even get a seat. Like it's just like
Wow.
so busy. So it's unbelievable. And I also found out that Spaniards have 5 meals. They have two breakfasts. Their first breakfast is generally just a coffee and milk,
Okay.
and generally pastry or just the coffee itself. That's like the first thing that they'll have. Then breakfast, which is like the real breakfast, is around 10 a.m. That's when they have a little bit of a heartier breakfast with like eggs or just something like that. And then lunch isn't until like 2 p.m. Lunch is also like a lot later. And then they have like I guess it's kind of I can't remember what it's called, this meal. It has a name to it. I completely forgot, but it's basically I find it to be the equivalent to our happy hour. You go out for a drink and like, you
Okay.
know, small bites with friends, or you go out and grab a coffee or tea with friends. Um, and then they have dinner, and then dinner apparently is the smallest meal that they eat, and that's why they eat so late because it's not like this gigantic meal, unlike lunchtime is the largest meal.
Yeah. What do you think that Spaniards think of Americans?
That is a good question. I know that there's a lot of Spaniards, a lot of my friends, they love the US, primarily our, our pop culture and how we're
Mm,
leading the trend in entertainment and how all like the tech trends come from the US. So it's really interesting to see and hear them talk about things that are happening in the US. Like one year when I was here in Spain, um, I was living in Portland at the time, Portland, Oregon, and
okay.
someone that I had met randomly at a bar, they were like completely like freaking out that I was from Portland. They're like, "Oh, I watched the show Portlandia." And I just thought like Portlandia. I was like, "What? They play that here?" So it was really funny. So it's pretty cool to see that they admire US culture in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something. And do you speak any other languages besides Spanish and English?
Just Spanish and English, and I am
Nice.
learning Portuguese.
Okay.
Um, so it's very similar to Spanish, but I feel like it's a little confusing sometimes because there
Mm.
are some words that my brain wants to think about it in Spanish, but it's like completely different. So I feel like it's going to take me a while to actually have a conversation.
Oh, yeah, it takes time. And so you said that you're Mexican, right? So did you start
Yeah.
learning Spanish at a younger age or in the school system?
I did. So I started learning Spanish. So Spanish was actually my first language growing up. And I didn't
Mhm.
learn English until I went to preschool. So yeah, it was really interesting that my parents did it, I guess, like in reverse. Normally people, I guess, learn English, then they learn Spanish in school. But yeah.
And what are some of your career goals moving forward?
Yeah, so my career goals. So actually, this is such a great question because
Mhm.
since last year, I've been trying to make my blog my number one like a
Mm.
profession and my number one stream of income. And I worked so hard last year to do a lot of cleanup on it and just be a little bit more mindful and be able to
Right.
be very methodical with it and reach my goal. And so now that is my sole focus. And so
Mm.
this year, my career goal for this year alone is that I want to expand on it. I want to be able to grow it into being something more than just a blog and how it is
Mhm.
now and being having it be a destination for a wellness
Mm.
lifestyle. And I'm currently working on developing an app around mindfulness, but also bringing in my whole journaling challenge as being its main focus and tying in all these different elements of well-being that you can find on my blog, but having it
Mhm.
being so it's very approachable for someone that's new to it. I
Right.
want to take the thing that I have found with the whole wellness community and mindfulness, especially, is that people feel intimidated when it's not approachable. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times people will teach mindfulness or they speak about mindfulness in a very like woo woo way, and a lot of people are really turned off by that, or it
Mhm.
um it kind of freaks them out a little bit, and so then they aren't really wanting to give something a try. So I want to take
Okay.
that barrier away and make it so it's approachable and adaptable to someone, and they could easily pick it up and understand the benefit of it.
Yeah, well, I can say scrolling through your feed, everything looks very, visually appealing and, very easy for someone to connect with
Oh, thank
based off the
you.
advice and everything that you give.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you. Is there anything else that you wanna leave us with?
Um, Yeah, that my only takeaway is that I think that in this year, I think that we all have been. I think you've been seeing this theme on Instagram, especially this new
Yeah,
era of me and working on that. And
yeah.
the one thing that I want to give people to take away with is that this year it's all about focusing and shifting our perspectives on ourselves and whatever we see on social, take that as a grain of salt and just see that as
Mm,
an inspiration on how you can incorporate that in your life and take elements of it. I think that I feel like this is a topic that I hear amongst a lot of my friends lately, that
Yeah.
some things might seem a little unattainable, but I think that if
Mm.
we take a step back and use things as inspiration and let us reflect on, our own personal goals and how we can, you know, change a little few things here and there and take those baby steps, I think that we'll be all off on a great start this year and continue the year strong.
Mhm.
And if that means moving across the globe or starting a
Yeah.
business or whatever it is, hopefully that brings some inspiration.
Yeah, I always see that quote too, that the time is now.
Yeah.
The time is now to start something, never be afraid, just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which it also, made me think about you and what you've been doing. I find that really inspiring and seeing all these new steps you're taking within your career. It's really inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely been a fun journey. Thank you so much, Valerie, for coming on.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.